Welcome back, everyone, to J-Face Games. Today we are getting back into it on the RPG, and we are going to be exploring a couple different concepts today. So this is sort of a mashup video of sorts, because as we've been putting out some of these beta characters, one, I've stalled out on the leader because that has to do with some form of healing to a degree, and that then brings up the point of how are we going to do health in this game. So that's one question. And then two, the other thing is someone was discussing in the chat, I forget who, I apologize, that they were a little concerned with the idea that your health is also your fuel for your abilities, because they found that even in Cypher, which I've not had a chance to actually play a full session of Cypher, but in Cypher he found that the players, that level of risk reward sort of stunted them a little bit. So today we're going to try to address all of those things a little bit. So the first thing we're going to talk about is soul points. All right, so I'm trying to come up with new names besides just hit points and besides stamina, because I don't think that sort of establishes it. So your soul points are what you're going to get when you level, and we've already discussed that soul points you're going to be able to buy attributes. You're going to be able to buy backgrounds. You're going to be able to buy powers / feats. We don't know which term we're going to use 100%. Powers, feats. But then what you're going to be able to buy with these soul points also is that you're going to have two different pools, right? You're either going to be spending what's left into what would in essence be sort of like your health, right? And we're going to go into more detail about that in a second. And then the other thing is your spark point pool. Okay. Now spark points, I'm not 100% sold on this yet either, but the idea could be that spark points are what power abilities, and health is what then is your actual hit points, which I think at this point we would just say soul points. It's in essence what's left over is represented by your health. So that's one way of doing it, right? And so I think that there's going to be this is one possibility. This brings us to a different option, okay? And I'm still working on this option, so bear with me, all right? There was someone in the chat by the name of Cladis who mentioned a system of what if you have a major, minor, and stress type hit point system. And this is kind of similar to Fate, I think. I could be wrong, but I think it's a little similar to Fate, that you have, in essence, major, minor, and stress. And he said something along the lines of maybe, one major equals 3 minors, 1 minor equals 3 stress, etc. And you have this sort of math sort of scenario there. And I like this idea, I do. And Fate has something like this. I think they call them traumas or consequences. And they have stress bubbles and major and minor. And you can take a major stress, or I think that in Fate, you have 3 stress to give, but at any point in time, if you are about to take more than that, you could instead take a minor consequence or a major consequence, and those things are affecting your, gameplay. So this leads into let's figure out how you can create something like that, visualize something like that on a character sheet, and maybe you use those soul points to buy different tiers of these abilities, right? You buy different tiers. And so this might be an example of 2 different types of characters. This character down here has a major damage they can take. They have 2 minor, and then they've got 4 stress, right? And maybe it's something like this, where it's a pyramid effect, right? Where you have to have 2 below to get the other one. Maybe you only need 1 below, right? Maybe this person technically could look like this, where they had that sort of thing. Maybe it's just 1 below, and then you can go, right? And bear with me, because we're going to get into why maybe that's the case. Maybe you don't even need to have 1s below. And then you have this person here. Well, different attacks from monsters can do different types of damage. You could have an attack that's like a big, massive bite from a dragon that is a major damage source. And you could have lots of little goblin, daggers that are or spears that are prodding at you, and each one of those is stress, right? Well, what happens is, if you get hit by something, it will take that subsequent bubble away. Okay? So if you get a stress, and this should say stress, not stamina. Sorry. If you get a stress, so let's give an example of these characters. Both these characters are fighting goblins, and let's say that they both take 3 stress from the goblins. Well, this character after 3 stress would look like this, because they're kind of checking them off as they go. Boom, boom, boom. And then this character down here would look like this. Okay? Great. Now, let's say that you take a major damage. Well, this person up here does not have a major damage bubble. So if they were to take a major damage, they're instantly out, knocked down. This person has at least 1, so they could take a major damage, right? So that's important to note. Let's say, what happens if you take another stress? Well, if this person takes another stress, they take it. This person, if they take another stress, it doesn't affect one of these ones above. I think that kind of represents like durability, right? You're able to sustain big hits, but you don't have a lot of stress to give, but it's not like more stress is going to compound up into a minor. Maybe it could, but maybe it's not. And the reason I say that is because I want to use stress as a different resource, right? So that's important. So stress is a factor of 2 different things. One, you have to have a stress in order to possibly get minor and majors. But 2, stress is going to be another resource. So if this person gets hit by a stress, it doesn't do anything, but they can still take 2 minors and they can take a major. This person, they can only take 1 minor hit, and they can't take any major hits, but they have a lot of stress to give out, right? Now, this goes into maybe stress becomes the resource that you use to fuel powers, right? And I don't want it to mean that you're constantly burning stress, right? Because I think that would be sort of unfair. But let's say that, what's some things you can do with stress? Let's say that with stress, in essence, at the beginning of the day, you go through what powers you have, what feats or powers you have, and you can queue up a dice, right? Worth of those powers. And this might be a little abstract, and I don't know if we're going to sit with this, but just hear me out. So let's say that you have, I don't know, we're just going to grab some stuff. Let's say you've got Feint as a power. Let's say you've got Feint as a power, and so we'll say power list. And you've got Feint, you've got some sort of heal, big damage, block, right? Let's say those are your 4 powers. I don't know. Well, at the beginning of the day, you have a dice you can choose, right? You can either choose a D4, D6, D8, D10, and maybe there's a reason why you would choose one versus the other. And then you just assign those powers into different slots. So let's say this person decides to use the D6, right? And what they then have is they're going to say, I'm going to put Feint at 1, I'm going to put heal, I'm going to put big damage, heal, I'm going to do big damage, heal, and block, right? And so now what they're doing is they're trying to spread out some sort of an array they like in order to get to certain abilities easily, right? So hear me out. So now on your turn, beginning of the turn, you roll a d6. What that d6 determines for you is what ability can you use without burning any stress, right? So if I rolled a 3, I could do my heal power, or whatever power I had there, I could do that no problem, right? But say I wanted to do big damage, right? I wanted to do a big damage attack. Well, now, because it's 1 space away from the 3, I'd have to burn 1 stress to either go down to the 2 or up to the 4, right? And then I would be able to do my big damage attack, but it cost me 1 stress, right? This might be a nice way of being able to have that feel, because I still like the idea that maybe you can't do everything every round, right? And so that's where, yes, you could use power points to like, to do a feint, it costs 2 power points, right? And so every round, say I want to do a feint every round, it costs me 2 power points, 2 power points. That doesn't really like give you the feel of how battle ebbs and flows. right? Because sometimes you don't have that opportunity. Maybe this sort of preloading of a dice allows you that, right? Because maybe what you do is you say, you know what, I'm going to go with the D4 this round because this day, or maybe you get to, I say the beginning of a day, but I don't know how else to speed it up because I don't want someone to be starting an encounter and be like, oh, they've got this, this, and this, so I'm going to load up my dice because that feels weird. But say it's like you decide to just say, I'm going to use a D4 and I'm going to put these 4 things here, and now there's a 25% chance that I'm going to get it, or worst case scenario, I'm at least within 2. So that's one scenario. Or maybe I've done like, I just want to hit hard all day today. So I'm going to do this, and odds are I'm going to, it's only going to cost me 1 power point to hit hard. I don't know. So now, if this is sort of built into the system, and we think back about this character, this person has more flexibility in what they're able to do on their turn, but they're not as durable, right? This person has less flexibility in terms of what they're able to do on their turn, but they're very durable, right? And so I don't know how this ends up playing out for a player. Maybe this player can burn a minor, and that minor counts as 2 stress points. So they're in this scenario, and they're like, man, I really want to be able to do my big damage hit, but I didn't roll it. I'm going to burn this minor, even though it technically counts as 2 stress points, and the minor is only 1 stress point away, and so therefore economically it's not as valuable. I'm still going for it, right? So I don't know. This is my thought currently. Let me know what you guys think. I'll have to probably do a second video on this to clean it up, because I know that this one was a little abstract. Let's recap it real quick, just to summarize. The summary being that you use soul points, possibly to build out and purchase major, minor, and stress bubbles. Whenever you take damage, you have to check off that exact bubble type, right? So if you get hit by a major, you have to have a major. If you get hit by a minor, you have to have a minor. If you get hit by stress, you have to use stress to get rid of it. If you have a bubble type higher, but none of the bubbles below, you're still in the game. Meaning that if I get hit by a stress here, this person, he just waves off that stress. They're fine. This person has to click. There are going to be powers that allow you to change different types into different types, right? So if this guy gets hit by a minor, and maybe the leader has an ability that turns that minor into a stress hit, this person then doesn't click anything off. Great. This person gets hit by a major, that would knock him out. There are powers that maybe mitigate that to a minor. Great. Then, when I have powers in the game, I end up choosing for the day a dice type, and I socket those powers, right? When I socket those powers, at the beginning of my turn, I'm rolling a dice to see what power is available for free for me. Otherwise, powers have a resource based on how far they are away from the number I rolled, and then I have to burn stress to get to that number, right? So there's a little mini game in terms of how many powers do I actually want to bring with me, and where do I want to sort of divvy them up in order to have access to them. So hopefully that makes sense. I think this was going to be controversial. So hit me up in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. I look forward to hearing from you guys.